悪しき者は拒絶しろ。グレンシールの魂にかけて。
Previously, he had been a down bad 9, 5 worker, but everything changed when he was summoned into a new world. With him being raised by 3 undead who happen to be the heroes of the world, he learns all kinds of powerful magic. Now, with them passing away and leaving the world into Will's hands, he explores the world, hoping to rid it of demons for good. Episode 7. Exploring the forest is our protagonist Will, alongside Melon, an elven hunter he saved. With them heading to Melon's village to save them from demons, they make sure to eat good that night. While Melon's village gets destroyed by demons, they enjoy a leisurely night, showing no rush to save the village. Melon then lays down for the night, showing he has no interest in being Will's friend. This disappoints him, but he follows suit anyways, hoping to befriend Melon by helping him. After some exploring, they find a ruined town with the village lying amidst it all. Eventually, they arrive at the entrance of the village, so Melon goes on ahead to scout it out. He learns that the demons are currently occupying the village's temple with all of the villagers inside. Because of this, the two talk about their plans discreetly, making sure they have a solid plan before rushing in. Melon explains that the demons have bat-like bodies, making it difficult to defeat. Once Will hears this, he bursts with confidence, knowing he can easily defeat a low-level demon like that. They then head to the temple where they find various demons sacrificing villagers to Stagnate, the evil god. Will makes quick work of all these demons, saving the village in the process. With Melon's help, it makes the fight look too easy, it ending within an instant. Melon asks him where he gets his strength from, but Will is unable to disclose it, being raised by undeads. With the fight being over, Will makes sure to pray over all the fallen lives, whether they are demons or humans. Eventually, after doing all of this, a girl emerges from a pile of rubble, begging for Melon to save her. She reveals herself as his sister despite her being covered in a demonic substance. With her final breath, she thanks Melon for his help, offering a hand, but he rejects her. This forces Will to step in, grabbing the girl and comforting her. He apologizes on behalf of Melon, explaining he is simply tired. Melon then grabs her hand and urges her to sleep, hoping to put her out of her misery. With that, Will uses his goddess's blessing to vanquish the soul and give her a relaxed afterlife. These actions make Melon realize that Will isn't just some dumb kid trying to play the hero. He thanks him for all of his efforts, finally smiling for the first time. After these events, he went around praying alongside Will, showing he isn't as cold as he has been made out to be. Now, with everyone sent to the afterlife, Will tries to leave, but Melon informs him there is one last place. He guides Will to a house where some old hag resides in a ghost form. With Will unsure of her motives, he clenches his sword, but she shows she still has her sanity. Melon then explains to Will that this old hag is friendly, informing him she has been a ghost for some time. Once he tells Will this, the old hag starts pressing him, asking why he looks so upset. Melon then explains that he is stressed out, having to protect the entire village all by himself. He wishes that a god would help him, showing he has never experienced a god's love like Will has. These thoughts make him fall to the ground, wishing he wasn't an elf, so he could have died already. After she hears all of this, the old hag tells him to stop living like a useless bum and finally venture out into the world to achieve something larger than himself. These words seem to hit home for Melon, so he breaks down into tears. The old hag then asks Will to watch over Melon, knowing he plans on joining him in his conquest. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. If you could watch any anime again for the first time, what would it be? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now, back to the recap. She then tells Will of the source of all the demons, referring to a large mountain. This makes Will question why she is still hanging on as a ghost. She tells him she has waited for this exact moment to finally send Melon on his way, her having someone waiting on her in heaven. With this, she gives Melon one final hug before leaving for good. They then head back into town to give the dead humans who suffered by the demon's hand a final goodbye. With Will being nearby, he's able to call upon the goddess to give them all a peaceful afterlife. A few days after this happens, the villager, who originally resided in the town, came back to bury the fallen townspeople. Although they lost a lot, The old hag kept a stash of liquor in her house, allowing the villagers to enjoy the night. Will wonders how people could be so happy despite losing their families, but goes with it anyways. Later that day, when he is out exploring, he finds one of Melin's fairies buzzing around, so he decides to follow it. Upon doing so, he finds Milan sitting atop a ruined structure. Once he gets to the top, he sits down and invites Milan to join him on a journey of vanquishing the world of its evil. He thinks this is too big of a plan to ever achieve, but Will shows he is serious. He then asks about the old hag, wondering what she was like. Milan explains that because he was a half-elf, he was thrown out of his village and forced to survive on his own. He spent years in the forest until one day he encountered a group of adventurers trying to befriend him. He trusted them at first, but soon after he was poisoned alongside the rest of his crew. After this happened, he wandered around until he found the old hag's house, before she was an old hag. She treated him and taught him the basics he needed about surviving until present day. Now, with her dead, he doesn't know how to live his life, hoping Will can help him find his purpose. After sharing all of this, Melon gets up like nothing is wrong, urging Will they should get moving soon. Before he does, he asks Will to bless him with the goddess's power after seeing how it allowed him to free all of the souls. Will accepts and decides to be the medium to hopefully grow Milan's bond with the goddess. Episode 8. Before they leave the village, they try to repair some of the structures, but it's a challenge. They talk about white sails, explaining even if they rebuilt, they need to worry about them. This causes Will to ask more about what these are and how this village came about. Milan explains that 200 years ago, the heroes fought the demon army which caused many people to migrate. With there being no safe towns in a world filled with demons, people flocked to White Sails, a port town that could access multiple parts of the continent. He praises the heroes for establishing this land, not knowing that these very heroes were the ones who raised Will. As he explains it more, of the villagers join in on the conversation, telling him because the world is in such chaos, the praise towards the gods and heroes have weakened. Will then suggest that they explore some ruins to try and find treasure to help rebuild the village. To start, they look through the forest but are stopped when a giant ape runs by chasing a couple of people. They stand and watch at first, but after seeing an elf girl get cornered, Will is forced to emerge. He stares deep into the gorilla's eyes, showing he means business. His gaze scares the ape away, causing it to retreat without putting up a fight. This feat stuns the girl, introducing herself as Robina, a troublemaker who sings and dances wherever she wants. She then introduces the old man as Tonio, a man who used to work for her company. He explains that he was on his way to White Sails until they were spotted by the ape. With them introducing themselves, Will decides to introduce himself back, making Robina like him even more. She tells him his name sounds like a noble name, calling him super cool. Melan then asks Tonio if they are the only ones here, to which he explains he had a group protecting them, but they ran away after the ape emerged. With their guards being gone, Milan offers to take up the role and protect him. With them showing their strength earlier, they decide to trust the two, hiring them as guards. Robina, on the other hand, still thinks that Will is a noble, asking why he is so strange. He tries to explain himself, but he only worsens the situation until they eventually leave for White Sails. After some traveling, they eventually arrive to a town where Tonio and Robina try to make some money. Robina sings and dances while Tonio attempts to sell some random junk. With him being an S-rank scammer, he brings in lots of people to see what he is offering. As he tries to sell some junk, he calls on Will, asking him to do him a favor. He asks him to heal someone for him, hoping to gain merit with the town. The girl who he healed asks him what they can do to repay him, but Will guides them to Tonio. Here he scams the girl, selling her some ugly hair thing. Will then leaves the man to do his work, talking with Melon about the future. He tells him he plans on using his power to help more people until he is interrupted by Robina, calling him to party. After this happens, they continue on their journey, deciding to spend the night in a storehouse. Despite them traveling all day long, Robina is still full of energy, offering to sing for the group. They ask her to just give them some peace, but she insists, pulling out her instrument. She then begins playing it, making Will learn more about the world in the process. She sings about the feats of the heroes, making Will realize he really didn't know much about Blood's life, with her including Gus and Mary in the song as well. It brings a smile to Will's face, knowing they are in a better place. She continues the song, telling stories about the heroes before they were even considered heroes. Originally Mary, Will's mother, was an elven princess who was sold off to be a fighter. Instead of being abused, she ended up falling in love with Blood and working together. A long time ago during their journey, a boy approached them, asking for help killing a wyvern. Although he only gave them small chump change, Gus, Will's grandfather accepted it gracefully. With him being on board, the others followed suit, putting Mary up as a sacrifice to bait in the wyvern. Once it emerged, the heroes made quick work of it, each displaying their own powers. This feat was before they were called heroes, but it marked the start of an adventure that would go down in legends. They ended up giving the young boy a sword and a large sum of change to continue with his life. This event caused the two to start their fable as heroes within the world. These two people went on to become legends themselves, the elven girl still being alive. This inspires Will to try his hardest to become stronger, wanting to have stories told about himself one day. He realizes that although most people have forgotten the heroes, they're still recognized by some. Because of this, he gets up the next morning to train as hard as he can, until Tonio approaches him. He tells him that he is already strong enough, but is unsure about one thing. He asks Will what his goal is, knowing he isn't simply after the money he can give him. With Will being strong, educated, and grounded in his faith, it makes him seem as if he is a holy knight in Tonio's eyes. Because of this, he asks again what Will's true intentions are in life. Will explains that he has lived his life peacefully until one day, when he lost it all. With him living such a peaceful life, he didn't learn anything about this world, causing him to want to explore more than anything. Following this, they continued their journey to White Sails, hoping to arrive pretty soon. Episode 9. After some time, they finally arrive at the town, and Will is stunned, it being his first time seeing a real town. With everyone being accepted into the town, they easily enter, making Will surprised to see how advanced the town is. On top of their amazing welcoming, there are various ships in the town making the economy thrive. They then head further into the center of the town to see tons of different items. As they venture further into the town, Will spots a streetlight, making him wonder if they have electricity. Robina explains that it's all powered through magic, showing Will another large building. She reveals that the city has a bathhouse that is accessible to anyone who wishes to use it. Having never taken a bath since arriving in this world, Will enjoys it to the fullest. He continues to enjoy life in this town, making it seem like he has forgotten his true purpose. Robina then informs him next up is dinner, guiding him into an established restaurant. With various seafoods cooked to perfection, Will realizes that he has been living like a bum his whole life. Along with the delicious food, they have well-brewed alcohol, making the place seem even better. Following this, they head to the temple, so that Will can pray to his goddess in a proper format. Upon entering, he sees various statues, and art making him wonder why it seems more like a tourism spot. He then approaches the priest and asks where the goddess of light statue is, hoping to pay his respects. The priest informs him that not many people pray to such a god, explaining they have no statue for her. He tells Will that on top of this, all of the higher-ranking priests are out of town dealing with things, so he can't receive any blessings. As he speaks with the priest, a man named Bishop Bagley emerges asking what he is doing. He yells at the priest for slacking off, but is interrupted when Will starts speaking to him. He explains his situation, wanting to pay his respects to Gracefield. This raises suspicion in the priest, so he tells him he needs to prove his faith to him. Will then recites the words that the goddess has told him, earning the Bagley's respect. He tells the low-ranked priest to show him around, asking him not to cause any trouble in the process. He then leaves, allowing Will to explore more of the temple. As they walk, the priest explains that the bishop is wicked, using his fame to do what he pleases with others. Following this, Will heads back to his inn where he talks about the head of the temple with the others. They tell him that he is pretty secretive, but as they speak, an alarm begins to sound. They look outside and spot a wyvern heading straight towards the temple. It destroys some walls on the way and continues to wreak havoc within the city. With everyone in distress, they pray to God, but get no response, forcing Will to take matters into his own hands. He somehow gets atop the temple and sees the guards making pointless attempts to wipe out the wyvern. As people continue to get obliterated, Will finally takes action, sending a magic spell at the wyvern. His first spell misses, but he continues to fire high-ranked spells until Milan stops him. He tells him to think of a plan instead of randomly firing magic attacks. Once he hears this, he calms down and urges the party to follow him. Melon then uses his own magic to help Will properly aim his attack. With the combined attack, they send in a large web that tracks the wyvern down. This subdues it, giving hope into the people thinking they have a chance. Although they got it first, the wyvern breaks out of the attack and shifts its attention onto Will's group. It charges full speed while Will prays for a blessing from the god to protect the temple. This activates a large-scale barrier, blocking everything that tries to get inside. This only lasts for a moment, however, forcing the party to think fast. Melon uses an attack to knock it down, Then Will binds it yet again. He follows this by striking its heart with his spear, inflicting a fatal wound on the wyvern. Despite this attack, the wyvern stands strong, forcing Will to exert more of his power. He grabs hold of the wyvern and forces it onto the ground, stopping it from shooting its fire breath. Will then tightens his grip and finishes off the wyvern by himself, stunning the civilians. After this happens, Tonio and Robina start praising him, calling Will a new hero. With these praises, everyone surrounds Will, thanking him for saving their kingdom. Once he finishes cleaning things up, the crown prince of the kingdom invites Will to his mansion. Will obliges and follows him, introducing himself to the prince. Thanks to his manners, the prince assumes he is of noble blood, but Will informs him he is mysterious, so he can't answer. The prince then invites him to sit down while Melon is forced to stand, him being an elf. The prince assumes that Will's party helped him with his attacks, but he explains that it was all him and Melon. He introduces Melon as the fairy user, and himself as the one who used all of the other attacks. Upon saying this, the tension arises, causing the prince to ask Will why he isn't acting high and mighty after slaying a wyvern. He calls Will a hero and asks him what kind of reward he wants for his efforts. Will tells him that he came from a faraway land where the villagers are in constant fear of demons. He asks him to provide soldiers to hunt down the demons to help the village. Unfortunately, the prince tells him that it would be hard to grant this wish. The forest he speaks of being covered in a poisonous mist. He asks Will how he was able to withstand the attack, raising suspicion. With this, Will then asks him for money in order to hire adventurers to deal with the monsters himself. The prince tells him that although he can fulfill this request, he also has to consider Will's intentions. He tells Will that he may have to kill him if he doesn't answer properly. Episode 10. This doesn't faze Will, however. Having just defeated a wyvern, he asks Will to prove his identity to him so that he knows he isn't a threat. Will then asks him a question, wondering what he would do if all evil was rid of this world. He tells the prince he has received a part of Gracefield's power, making him a direct proxy of the goddess. He then kneels down and begs for the prince to recognize his efforts. Upon hearing this, the prince laughs, telling him he trusts him after seeing his courage. He tells him he couldn't kill him even if he wanted, the half-elf giving him a murderous glare. As they talk, the fat bishop enters the room, claiming that Will is registered with his temple, so he owns him. He asks the prince how he could go against their ideals, calling him ignorant. The prince counters, claiming that if he really cared about Will, he would have beat him to the punch. He explains that although he is registered under his temple, Will has no ill intentions, asking him for a private army. With this, he tells the bishop that he plans on appointing Will a paladin so that he can be a part of the church and kingdom. This offer includes not only the church's demands but also his own, splitting the share of him. The bishop tells him he'll think about leaving the mansion in the process. As they walk out, the bishop starts yelling at Will and Melon for acting without his permission. Melon starts arguing back with him, allowing Will to spit some game on the blonde girl accompanying him. She tells him that she is the fat bishop's daughter, apologizing in his stead. Once Will hears this, he understands that the bishop is just a bit angry from not filling his belly up, so he promises to help him in any way he can. The bishop then orders him to follow him for evening prayer. With him being over 300 lb, he can't walk for more than 10 minutes, so he sits down, asking his daughter Anna to help Will. Will and the bishop then head to the temple to do this evening prayer. The bishop actually seems like a real believer when he does, getting on his knees and praying to the gods. Once Will finishes praying, he asks the bishop why he has never used his divine blessing before. This causes the bishop to ask him a question back, seeing what he thinks a divine blessing even is. He tells him that divine blessings aren't always used to save others, but rather it's a tool to help the gods. With him seeing the gods' duty as his own, he informs Will that unless he is told to help others, he won't use his powers. He tells Will that he believes you should keep the blessings you get within yourself to strengthen your faith. Will realizes that although they have different ideals, he is still an amazing man to stay true to his faith. Following this, the bishop walks towards Will, asking him the same question back. Will tells him that his god wants him to help others by using her power. He tells him that he wants to become a paladin in order to achieve this goal. Surprisingly, the bishop doesn't get angry at Will, instead showing a kind side, telling Will he should do what his god tells him. After these events, they head to a tavern to hopefully find some strong adventurers for their journey. As they walk through the tavern, everyone notices them as strong opponents, calling him the Wyvern Killer. Will then explains his goal, telling the men that he needs help exploring the monster forest. Everyone laughs at him for providing such a small sum, but they stop when a scruffy man stops them. This makes Will remember what Blood told him growing up. urging him to look at one's hand to assess their skills. He sees the man's hands and realizes this isn't just any run-of-the-mill adventure. Will then walks over to the group and informs them that he isn't just exploring the forest, but he plans on taking down all of the demons within it. The man sees this as a challenge, so he decides to join Will on his journey, telling him all he needs is a place to stay and some wine. Lots of other adventurers follow suit once the man agrees to help, causing him to introduce himself to Will as Ray. They talk about their plans on adventuring the forest, Will bringing Robina along with him. Apparently the two have met many times before, but Robina is clearly not fond of Ray. She calls him a trash adventurer for only using his skills for himself rather than being a hero like Will. She explains that Ray only accepts the hardest of tasks, but once he completes it, he refuses to tell Robina any of the events that happened. This angers her because she wants to make a heroic tale about him. Later that week before they leave the village, the prince holds a ceremony for Will, announcing him as an official knight. The prince gives Will his praise, which is followed by the vice-bishop praying over Will. He announces Will as the new hero of the world, the light, and the one who will bring peace to their lands. Episode 11. Since that day, Will set off to investigate the beast forest, all the while transporting goods to supply the small village with. With Tonio in charge of the business interactions, everything went pretty smoothly for Will. On top of this, he provided various weapons for the people to use, showing he doesn't plan on just supplying them and leaving. Accompanying him on this journey is Anna, who helps heal the villagers. Along with her accompanying him to heal the wounded, Ray went and killed various beasts. Ray tells Will that whatever is within his sword's range he can kill, even a wyvern. After this, things went along smoothly for the village, gradually regaining their previous strength. As time went on, the villagers and adventurers started to get acquainted. Will explains that he traveled back and forth time and time again, hoping to one day not have to watch over the forest. This time when he heads back to see the village, they have shops set up and various farmlands going. Will realizes that thanks to his efforts, the previously broken-down village now thrives, attracting lots of travelers. This makes Will realize that his efforts haven't been in vain. One night when he sharpens his weapons, Ray enters his tent to inform him that his party is in trouble. He asks for Will's help exploring the forest, telling him they have located the demon's base. Before they enter it, they look around for two of Ray's party members after hearing they went missing. As they search around, Melon finally thanks Will, having realized that thanks to him, his previously run-down village is now thriving. Will, however, thinks that none of this would be possible without his help, so he thanks him back. After some searching, they eventually find Ray's party members dead. Upon investigating the area, they find a large hole in the ground, making them wonder what kind of demon could do such an attack. Once they finish burying the fallen adventurers, they pour one out for them, wishing them a good afterlife. They then realize one of the adventurers is missing, so they look around, eventually finding various belongings leading up a trail. They follow this trail until they realize something is going on here. Will then seize the head of the adventurer burying, alerting him to the trap they have walked into. With hundreds of monsters surrounding them on every side, they prepare for a fight, knowing if they don't win, this is the end. To start, Will uses his goddess's blessing to buff the party, giving them the strength they need. Melon follows this by using his fairy magic to buff them even more. Now, with all of this help, Ray orders his men to start their counterattack. Starting off with arrows, they take down a few monsters, but with their numbers, it's only inevitable they break through. To make things worse, a chimera emerges, holding the power of various strong monsters. Melon tries to stop it, but he overpowers with ease, forcing Will to reveal his true power. He breaks free of the monster's grasp and tries to cast magic, but ends up using it on himself. He realizes that although everything has been going well so far, he has gotten ahead of himself. Because of this, he pulls out his Overeater sword and absorbs the strength of the monsters he kills. This enrages him, so he continues slashing through monsters, killing everything that he encounters. Will calls this fighting technique ugly, having to fight with all he has just to survive. With every strike, he shouts out, realizing he has never been able to protect those close to him. After he kills numerous monsters, Ray stops him, urging him to calm down. Will then stops his rampage and runs to heal Melon. Despite Melon's injuries, the goddess uses him as her proxy to bring Melon back to life. This causes Will to faint, unknowing whether he succeeded in healing Melon or not. Upon waking up, Ray enters the room to inform him that they all made it out alive, including Melon. Although he is alive, he is still on the brink of death, not having woken up since the battle. Will tries to run and heal him, but is stopped by Ray, informing him that he has already done enough for them. He agrees and goes back to sleep, wondering where he messed up in the first place. He realizes he got too confident, thinking he could take down all of the demons by himself. As he thinks to himself, he overhears some men outside talking about Will's party. They call him stupid for trying to deal with so many monsters and risking so many others' lives. This makes Will depressed, so he leaves the house and wanders to hopefully clear his thoughts. He thinks that he forced Melon into this life, blaming it all on himself. Eventually, he arrives at Melon's house where Robina and Tonio are waiting outside. They praise him yet again for his efforts, but this only makes Will more depressed. He ignores them and heads inside, hoping to heal Melen for good this time. Upon entering, he finds Melen covered in bandages while still being unconscious. Thanks to Will's prayers, he ends up healing him, but at the cost of promising not to force him to fight again. Episode 12. After healing him, he leaves, thinking he will never see him again. While walking through the forest, Melon stops him, asking why he is leaving without him. Will explains that he is going to kill the demons, telling him he can't keep up with him. He acts rude to Melon in hopes that he will forget about Will, not realizing how close the two have gotten. Melon protests, however, grabbing hold of Will in an attempt to stop him. Despite these attempts, Will is easily able to evade his attacks, breaking one of his arms in the process to stop him for good. He thinks this will stop Melon, but he gets right back up, causing Will to reconsider his tactics. He thinks of what spell to use, but is stopped when Melon uses an attack of his own. He gets hit by a bunch of rocks, allowing Melon to approach him. Melon tells him to stop being so selfish and let him come alongside him because they are friends. With this being the first time Melon has recognized Will as a friend, he realizes he was wrong, so he surrenders. Although he is stronger, Will admits his defeat and asks Melon to continue along his journey with him. Following this, Will heads back to the town with his head screwed back on straight. He tells them that he is planning on going back into the forest to defeat the demons, this time for good. Before he does, however, he talks with Ray to see if he has any advice for him. Ray tells him that he doesn't need his advice because he will be going with him. The other adventurers then follow suit and inform Will that they also won't give up. Once he hears this, Will promises all of them a large sum of money in exchange for their efforts. This time, instead of just rushing in head-on, they make a plan by scouting the area. Some days go by and Will is finally ready for his rematch against the demons. This time accompanying him is a group of priests who are on standby to heal them. After raising all of their spirits, he marches forward, hoping things will end differently this time. Thanks to his courage, everyone fights with their all, using every attack within their arsenal. As the fight goes on, Will realizes they actually have a chance this time because they planned their attack. While this battle occurs, the prince and bishop meet together discussing the raid. The bishop tells the prince that if Will fails this time, then he won't back him up anymore. The prince asks him why he trusted Will with his daughter if he truly doesn't believe in Will. The two eventually mediate, both showing they want Will to succeed for their kingdom to prosper. Meanwhile, Melon and Will venture through the forest until they eventually arrive at an abandoned building. Before they walk in, Will stops Melon, informing him they have someone waiting for him. He then uses a spell to reveal the chimera before them, showing it has been watching them this whole time. With the chimera before them, Will asks it what its goal is, mentioning the High King in the process. The chimera responds by asking him if he is a god's proxy, confirming Will's suspicions. He explains that because the High King is sealed, the demons are gathering to attempt a counterattack to release the seal. Although he knows the chimera's goal, he still doesn't falter, informing it that he will be the one to extinguish it. Following this statement, he slashes the chimera in the head, enraging it. This causes it to charge back to the group, but this only works out to their advantage. With Will using a spell to shift the chimera's balance, he's able to land another blow on it. This time it seems to do some real damage, making Will gain some confidence. He follows this original attack by striking it again and again, using all three of the hero's teachings to his advantage. As they fight, Melon eventually chops off the snake head of the monster, making it slightly weaker. Once this happens, the chimera tells Will that it will stop playing around now. It calls out for a dragon's power, forcing Will to up his game as well. This time when he charges in, he uses his shield to block the attack, allowing Melon to land another fatal blow on it. Will follows this by impaling another one of the heads, leaving only the main one remaining. With the chimera stunned by these advances, it enters a state of shock, allowing Will to strike through its head, finishing the battle. He then moves onto the hill where he suspects the rest of the demons are hiding. Upon entering, he finds Ray standing over a large monster. He tells Will that this monster was much easier than the chimera, asking him to be rewarded handsomely. With the demons being completely destroyed, throw a celebration back at the village. Robina helps Will out by writing a song about him and his efforts, causing his name to be known throughout the kingdom. Following these events, Will wonders what to do next, asking Melon if he has any plans. He tells him that he thinks they should build a temple for Gracefield, her still being relatively unknown in present day. On top of this, Melon suggests that Will become a lord, reminding him how much he has cleansed the beast forest. Will tells him that he is just a knight, but he reminds him of all his efforts. Not only did he rid the forest of monsters, but he also funded all of the supplies that helped the villages get back on their feet. Once he hears this, Will decides that he will become a lord, hoping to continue to protect the people.